from Amazon without an overbox, which I really don't care. But they did. Sometimes they get an overbox, sometimes they don't. Here is another YesWelder, and yes, we did decide to go ahead and buy 2 more of the 205 YesWelders, so that we can see how this works. Combustibles again. I will put them there and carry them away all at once. I did bring out my Howee knife in advance today. Those are supplied by Stonebridge. That's who makes them for us. You have to be extremely careful and not dander bang on any of these welder things, because we want to be sure that if they die, they're going to die on my dime instead of yours. And no, I did not get these from anybody for free. I paid real money for them. And I'm sure that if people saw some of what I do with them, we would be voiding warranty. Little brushes they give are beyond worthless, but yeah, that's not what we're concerned with. Okay, another strap. But having all that packing is good to show that they did care about getting them here in reasonable shape. But they're not beat up, they came nice. And we'll do the turn off for trying 3 to see what it does, because I just don't feel like wiring all of this together twice. I want to just do it once. So we'll make our connector a 4-way connector and put that together one time. Okay. The stinger, I brought out screwdrivers, but I didn't bring out a Phillips. I think this one might work anyway. Yes, it will. Sometimes you just do the stuff. I think most of you realize that. Probably should. Well, they're not the greatest of stingers. They are still a stinger. I wouldn't run high amperage through them, but for some amperage, I don't think they'd be that terrible. There, this one needs to come apart. I have to go get the right tool, or at least close to it. Pink on them. And the pink on the tools, when I put that on there, I was working at other shops and nobody would have pink tools back when I did that. I did that in the 80s and it pretty well kept everybody away from my tools. And then in the 90s, it became this great thing to have bright colored tools and things, and it no longer worked, but I had my own shop by then anyway, so it didn't matter. In fact, it worked well enough that at one point I had lost a punch, and I didn't even realize that I had lost it, but about 5 years later at a different shop, somebody came over to me and said, "Hey John, there's this punch I found over here. It's your color." And I had never used that punch at that shop, but it returned itself to me. So for a time, those pink colored tools were great. I would undercoat them with white paint before I put the pink on and then clear coat them. And It worked pretty well for a while. That is the wrong cable piece. That is for the little welder. This one. This one, this one. These are supposed to be just cable and hose cutters, but I find they work pretty good on a lot of this for stripping. That particular pair is Snap-on. I don't think they make that exact cutter anymore. I think they've changed it a little. Our piece right here, we used before. Yep, a little tough to get out of there. Let's just make it somewhat easier since I need to cut this hole bigger anyway. Most important part in cutting this is not whether or not we get it straight across, which is a nice idea if we could. But what's most important is don't cut yourself. Because it's owie, and I hate owies. I just hate owies. It comes out much easier that way. Okay, let's see, is that, I don't think that's going to be big enough yet. We gotta loosen this first anyhow. So, wrong size. Didn't use my micrometer eye to measure that one. I used my sloppy street eye. That off back a little more since we're doing all 4 cables. Now it's straighter. And that would be bad too if when we actually hooked these to the welders we got confused and had them deadheaded so that we were running them in series instead of parallel. So we had some of the negatives and positives, and we need to make sure that we keep all of our polarity the same. It may take a little bit. Until we get in the other piece, we might have to thin them down a little bit even. Might be too much cable to fit all 4 in together. We will find out though. I don't think so. I think it's under 4/0. Those Tweakos will go up to 4/0. They're hard to use sometimes at 4/0, but they will do it. Okay, we're gonna do this the easy way. I don't care. I don't care about that. We're gonna do this the easier way. Not worry about that. If that is actually pretty good size. I can't say that they were being. It's a lot of copper for a cheap welder, inexpensive welder. Don't know. Okay, I've done that before too. Could still be hard. Okay. Not the best way to do an adapter. Okay, we are going to grab some other nippers. And you see people doing this sometimes for house power cables and things. They got some surplus cable that was bigger than what's supposed to go in the box. It's illegal according to most places for your electrical codes, but yeah, we're not concerned about that because we're just hooking up a welder. And it would be a warm spot if we're really going to get fancy and do this a lot, which I don't think there's going to be too many people buying 4 of these welders and hooking them together. It's more likely just the 2, or maybe decide to use 3, but well, you can use 4. We'll have it hooked up here and see how it works. I don't think it's going to be that common for people to do. And we also could put this in a furl, little piece of smooth copper tubing, and smushed it down. Could have soldered it together. Lots of things we could do to make life easier, but sometimes it's not just easier, but quicker that we're looking for. And while I'm interested in this experiments of this project, I also have other things to do, and I just don't want to spend forever on it. If we were running the welders all on 240 volt and their maximum supposed to be 205, which I don't know if they really do that or not, but then that would be a problem, not having enough of all of the cables. I don't think it will be a problem with what we're doing here, because we're really not even pulling 100 amps off of each of these welders, and that's plenty of cord for 100 amps, even thinned down a little. And I will get a little tape, make up for our extra piece we cut off. And when we're doing real wiring, a lot of times I will start out with the first coat of PVC on backwards to be nice to either myself or the next guy in here, so this is not just a melted together mush. They do make liners, liner tape that doesn't have any sticky at all, that you can also use for this. And if you're going to have a really hot connection, as in the operating temperature is high, it should be something other than the PVC, because it will get melted and sticky even if the glue is over. Then I turn it back over and tape it down the regular way. And then, since this is for heavy duty stuff, I like to put self-vulcanizing rubber over the top of it. Some of this I have bought a long time ago, surplus, so if this is a little sticky together, that happens. The liner, the self-vulcanizing tape is normally pretty expensive when you buy it new at your local electrical place. And I've found that the best deals I get, it's not so much whether the tape is already new or old as it is the quantity of it. A quantity seller will generally give you a better price, but then since I buy 20 rolls at a time, sometimes it gets old because it might be a while before we use some. I'm sure that this has been here for at least 5 years, maybe 10. And this is what they call linerless. Some of this has a liner behind it to make it easier to peel off. Some of it is linerless. This is linerless. Means you got to fight a little bit to peel it off. And then the other thing you need to do when you're using this is you need to stretch it a little bit for two reasons. One is you stretch it comes off the roll easier. Number two, as you stretch it, it activates the binder inside the rubber and makes it vulcanize together to itself, making a nice solid piece later on. And when you go take it off, you just don't unwrap this particular tape, you cut it off. But with that first PVC liner underneath, it makes it a relatively nice situation to take it back off. Without that, it is really terrible. Oops. Okay, jump. And that's rubber. Nice ties. Leave that there. This can go in our box of spare stuff they gave us. Okay. Not too awful long. Where did we? I wonder where we put the stinger that we were using. I hadn't thought about that. So all of the stingers should be positive. Gonna have to work on bigger pieces so we got room for our ground clamps. I don't feel like binding them all together into one unit. But would probably give us a better operation. But I think the difference from what I've played with this stuff in the past, I think the difference would be minor. Austin must have picked up and recoiled some of our leads too. Okay, start out with a weld over there. And we still gotta find our actual stinger that we were using. Electrode holder. It's not really a stinger until you put a electrode in it. Not that anyone really cares. Which is a side point. The mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. Lots of mosquitoes in Alaska, and when you are out mining, sometimes they get to annoy you. So I did experiments with mosquitoes when I was in the mining camp. And what I found out was that if you catch the mosquito, and putting buac, lots of buac, which is the same thing as pick except for in massive quantity, if you put that in your room and they all get kind of sleepy, they still are around, they don't really bite, but you can take the little mosquito when you catch him, you very carefully catch him, and if you pull his wings off and you put him down, he falls over. He doesn't know how to balance. He's just done. Without his wings, he's worthless. None of them are going to bite you once they're not intact anyway. But if you take a mosquito and you pull his legs off, you can let him go and he'll fly, and then he'll kind of land and lay there, and he can push himself around, and he can take off again sometimes even. So they're a much more, anyway. Pulling their wings off really destroys them. If you just pull their legs off, they're still mostly functional. If you go up along the window when there's lots of them, and you take a lighter and go along the window, they kind of make a sound like a mild popcorn as they blow up. They burn well in the summertime. They go fit, fit, fit. And these things, you have to have 10,000 mosquitoes or more around you before you get into this mode. But there's a point where you just have mosquito hatred. Lots of people in Alaska understand that. And Of course, some people down in the South Bayou and down in Florida and places too. And we're not the only ones with mosquitoes. While we brag about how many we have, I have been down on the south end and I've seen some mosquitoes there too. Again, where is... That's one of those things I found out in business quite a while back. After someone refused to start doing a contract with me because I did not have a number yet for being an employer, which is a little different, but the same idea. I found out that as you are running a small business, it's best to say we and us. Even if you're the only employee, it's just good form to be we, us, we are going to. It makes you seem a lot more legitimate even when you're at one of those slowed down times. Look at that. Look at that. They all have numbers. And I think, what were we at, 111, 112 when we were running the 1/8 inch?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm just figuring if somewhere in the same range trying to run 1/4 inch at a good rate, it should take all 4 of these at a similar rating. Because normally the 1/4 inch will take twice the amperage at proper arc voltage that you have for the 1/8 inch. And I'm going more with that as to the way it welds than what we have for numbers. Okay, and I need to go get not that it's important for this little just run here, but my hood. If I'm doing lots of welding, I will tape or rivet a piece of leather is the best, but something on the front here to keep the ultraviolet light from giving me a sunburn, which is bad. You see that a lot of welders. The other thing, which I caught on to a little later, is a cloth, or again leather would be ideal, but this one's just I've been using cloth and duct tape over the back. And what that does is that keeps your lights or your sunlight from shining in on your lens that you're viewing through and giving you a reflection that makes it harder to see. If you can't see what you're welding, you really can't weld that well. Now, to a certain extent, after years of doing it, you can do some welding just by feel too. That's not where you start out. And it's always nice to be able to see, even if it's not essential. So now, we ran it with the 1/4 inch before, with 2 welders, and it ran, but it wasn't a nice welding. Welding bad, I still might like a little bit more. Now at the little point there you saw that it was somewhat uncontrollable, but And that's actually how 1/4-inch rod runs when you're running on little baby 1/2-inch plate like this on the one part. It will undercut. You will have to work with it to keep from burning through things. It's quite a bit of heat. There. Okay, I should actually find another piece to attach to that. And I said 1/2-inch. Actually, that's 3/4-inch plate. So just have to watch when you're in there. I'm probably a little bit hot now, but not terribly. I'd rather run it hotter, work the welder a little harder, rather than the other. For what we're doing. Yeah, I got a little BB came over the side there from having a not good weld. Let me go get my welding glasses. I have found, these are my normal shop glasses. I have found that it's better if you're really going to do welding. And if you're in that over 50 group where your eyes have changed, you get yourself a set of glasses that are the best focal lengths for doing what you're doing. So I will trade those off. Or, yeah, these are the ones. Some guys that just have a little bit of a problem with eyesight, they go to a cheater lens in the glass, but I find that doesn't really work for me. And then also bifocals. Just if you've gotten to where you're using bifocals and you think you forgot to weld, how to weld, well, the bifocals are probably why. I just get one focal length that works for where I'm at now. Not the right way to do it, but it works. I should have just cut it off, or at least get a slag hammer out here, but I didn't feel like it. Definitely works. Whoops. We were doing that on three welders, three welders, not 4. Okay. That might make a difference. We might have to turn our amperage back down. We get all 4 of them grounded up here again. So we know now that we can do it on 3. A whole lot of difference in the way that was working with just the 3 of them. I'm going to turn one off. Yeah, definitely cold. I don't know, I probably just knocked that clamp off at the end. I was probably welding with all 4 and didn't realize that I knocked the clamp off at the end. Okay, so you can make an actual weld, run a 1/4-inch rod. Did the machines get hot? Air coming out. Seems to not be too hot. None of them tripped off. The other thing here, and I think we could have done 1/4-inch rod with 4 of the 125s, because the 125 seems to weld when you weld it, use it by itself on 110. It seems to be about the same as these 205s. From Amazon without an overbox, which I really don't care. But it did. Sometimes they get an overbox, sometimes they don't. Here is another YesWelder, and yes, we did decide to go ahead and buy 2 more of the 205 YesWelders, so that we can see how this works. Combustibles again. I will put them there and carry them away all at once. And again, I'm not reviewing these looking at how they run on 220 volt. I'm just looking at what do they do. What do they do on 110? Because I really think if you're going to be running 220 volt, you're not going to be looking at what I'm seeing here as far as doing the multiple welders. You're going to just get one bigger welder, weld it, wire it in, it's going to stay in its place. The beauty of this, again, is just you can take these welders, the dragsters, whatever you're using, and parallel them together and go do something with 110 volt cord. You plug them into your house. Or into the house of whoever you're working on their stuff with. We could do it the modern way with the power driver, but I guess I just fall back a lot of times to the basics. And while power driver gets the screws out quicker, gets you underway to the next process quicker, sometimes there's something nice about just slowing down a little, some of it. Not that I want to do things slow overall in the shop, but it's just nice to be able to look and think about how is this thing come apart next when we're dropping all the screws out. Oh. Aha, the more hidden. Okay. Big question on this is the output, whatever their output gate transistors, diodes, whatever they've got. I think this said it was a gate transistor unit in the ads. What? And the other reason why I didn't go and get a power driver is because Austin, who's not here today, knows where everything is. His besides being one of the people that works here, his official title when he started, since we weren't really keeping track of where anything was, we called him Yard Czar. And his official title still is Yard Czar. He keeps track of the things outside that none of us know where is, and he also keeps track of lots of things inside that I don't know where is. So I could spend some time getting the power driver, using it. I'm actually too lazy, and that's why I'm putting the work in. Which reminds me of a little funny story. My dad, he was the head adjuster in a napkin department in a paper mill. And we also had a little hobby farm that I grew up on. We raised cattle is what we did. We didn't really do much farming, we did ranching. We had 80-some cattle at one time. Anyway, he told me this story. He had a boss that was always giving him a hard time about making every minute count. And it wasn't always to be the most productive, but wanted to show that people were working and looking like they were doing things. They needed to clean up for impressing some of the bigwigs that were coming through town. And to do this cleanup, they had a whole bunch of stuff that they were moving from one area to another, and they could have done it all in an hour, but they were supposed to, you know, be busy all day long while these bigwigs were in town too. So as they were moving this stuff, most of the guys were grabbing 2 or 3 of these plates at a time, and my dad was just grabbing one, which they were relatively light, but he was grabbing one, and he would pack it over and set it down in the other room. And he told me he'd kind of set this guy up in advance for this, but anyway, finally the guy came over and he asked him, his boss comes over, "Ed, why are you picking up and carrying only 1 plate when all these other guys are picking up at least 2 plates?" And he turned to the guy and he just said, "It's not my fault that those other guys are too lazy to make 2 trips." And I thought that was a pretty good comeback, but Dad liked to plan things and think ahead a little bit that way. That doesn't quite line up with the hole. That's okay. Uh-oh. I broke part of the plastic. Warranty's void. Okay. Now, guess we should keep track of which one's which. This is the 205. We'd know from the size of the terminals on the front too. Okay. 205. It has a bigger inductor. The transformer is actually bigger. So I'm impressed with that. And of course, your current's not all running through that because that's at a higher frequency. And the capacitors are bigger. It is a bigger machine. So, considering the small amount of money difference, even if you're not going to be running it at 220 volts and doing maximum welding, it looks like this one is going to hold up longer at the same level than the 125. And so I would go for buying the 205 if I was doing it again. I think the 125, something with their voltage and their programming just keeps it where the 125 running on the 110, 120 volt doesn't seem to do any more than the 205. But the 205, it has heavier duty components, and well, it would be my choice to buy 2 of those, put them together, and run 1/8" 532 rod and go do some production welding. We'll probably come back later and do a little repair. We have a rod bending machine that we built, and the tongue, a little tongue ring. We didn't make a really nice ring for it. We just took a piece of scrap and welded on there, and it came off. I don't know if the ring broke or whatever, but we'll have to repair that, and I think we'll go ahead and do that repair with a couple of these welders, probably, I don't know if we'll run off the shop power here or off my house. I'd like to run off my house, but I don't really feel like going outside. It'll depend on the weather, whether I'm going to go outside in the snow to weld that repair to show you that it can be done off of standard house current. And anyway, that's it for today. Thanks.